Hey guys, this is Ashley White, the owner of the Polkadot Alley, and I'm so excited to introduce you to the Alley podcast. Hey everybody. Okay, so chapter 1, we really focused on the Polkadot Alley. We talked about the 17 years from beginning till now. We talked about a lot of the things that I did to kind of grow the business and get it to where it is. We didn't, however, talk as much about me as the owner behind the brand. Katie told me that I should do a chapter in this podcast about me. And at first I said, they don't want to know about me. They already know about me. They watch all of the lives. They see everything. But she made a good point that you guys see what I want you to see. You see what I talk about. And I don't always dive really deep because, again, we're there to sell clothing. So this is an arena where I think we can kind of sit and go a little deeper and talk about things outside of the boutique and outside of selling. And why not start out by introducing you a little bit more to me? So that's what this episode is going to be about. If this is not the chapter for you, feel free to fast forward on to something else. But if this does interest you, I hope you will stick around and listen. We could go all the way back to 1980, but we won't. I am turning 44 this year, which is mind-boggling to me. And my daughter, if she listens to this, she's going to say, Mom, you made yourself sound like such a grandma. I don't know when that happens. I don't know if it was 30. I don't know if it was 40. I don't know when you cross over that threshold of being the person who laughs at the old people when they do the remember when stories, and then when you become those old people that do the remember when. But I am now officially in the era of aging myself. It's true. It happens to the best of us, even when you don't want it to. I'm there. I remember my dad turning 40 like it was yesterday, and they had tombstones set up in the yard and an over the hill birthday theme. And I thought he was so old. And now I'm 4 years beyond that this summer. So that's crazy. And I feel it too in so many ways. I feel like in some ways we forever feel young. When I'm sitting here talking to the young girls working for me, I don't feel like I'm a lot older than them. But then when I go to sit on the floor and 20 minutes later try to stand up and everything's creaking, I realize that I am. So I am going to be 44. I grew up, born here in Fort Worth, Texas, grew up in Arlington, Texas. We were just about to start high school. I would have been going to Martin High School, and my parents sold our house. We were living in Arlington. We moved to Colleyville, and I remember being devastated. I went to the Martin High School orientation. I got my locker assignment. I was so excited. The same night that we went to that, we got an offer on our house. And I remember my mom saying, we're moving. Basically, you're not going to go to this school. And I was so upset. And that's something that, wouldn't it be nice if we could always be able to see into the future and know that sometimes things happen the way they're supposed to and that they're the right decision? At the time, I was so upset and I was so angry. And, I had gone to school with all those same kids from kindergarten through ninth grade. So kindergarten through ninth, I was with them. I didn't want to have my final 3 years be with strangers. And I was just so upset about that. Looking back now, I'm so glad that they did it. I think it was the best decision. I went to Grapevine High School, had the time of my life. I was involved in student council. I met Krissy, who I'll tell you in a second that story, but I wouldn't even have my children if it weren't for Krissy. So had we not moved, the entire, trajectory of my life probably would have been different, as it is for anyone. And any decision that you make can obviously change the path. But that one would have been for sure. So after high school, loved high school. It was great. I went to Texas Tech, moved to Lubbock. I was there for 4 years. I became part of Alpha Chi Omega. I loved being in the sorority. It was so much fun. I met some of my absolute best friends to this day. I loved being a part of something. Kind of like, I feel like our VIP group now is its own sorority, honestly. And that's very fitting for me because I love that. I love the community. I love the aspect of feeling like you kind of have your people. You have people to talk to. And I love that so many of you in our group, maybe you're having a crummy day or you need a prayer or you have a funny story to tell us or your husband does something that annoys you and you want us to know about it. I love that so many of us go in the group and talk about those things, and we treat it as more than just the boutique group, that it was started to be. So anyway, that's what I did in college. Krissy, with no plan of our own, we were really close in high school. We both also ended up going to Texas Tech. And then, just as fate would have it, we both ended up being AKOs. So we went through Rush, and anyone who knows how recruitment week is in a sorority, we lived in separate dorms. So it's not something that we were talking about the whole week. This, of course, back then, we didn't have the ability, you couldn't text people. This was 1998. We weren't able to FaceTime. We weren't able to talk about how our day went during recruitment. So we had no idea. So talk about just meant to be. But we both ended up on the bid day bus on that final day, on that AKO bus. So high school, college, now sorority. In college, I worked as a waitress. I worked at Cricket's Bar and Grill for many years. Of course, through high school and college, I had other jobs. I was a hostess at Don Pablo's for a while. Let me tell you, the saddest day for me is when all the Don Pablo's shut down. The yummiest food. You mix the rice with the sour cream chicken enchilada sauce. It is like heaven. So I worked there. I worked at Texas Land and Cattle, and I'll never not be scarred by the outfit that I had to wear when I worked there. I was a hostess there as well, and I had to wear a bolero tie with a white button down and black jeans, black belt, and black shoes. And to this day, I think that's why I have this actual issue with black shoes. I almost never wear black shoes because they remind me of working in a restaurant. And I don't know what it is about it, but I just picture walking through the kitchen and the food on the floor and the peanuts and all the things. And I can hardly wear black shoes anymore. So Don Pablo's, Texas Land and Cattle. I actually worked at a gym at one point in the child care room. I've always worked. Starting at like 15, I think. I had babysat before that. I liked having my own money. I liked being able to pay for and buy the things that I wanted to buy, even if my parents wouldn't let me. So I always had jobs. I worked all through college. Mainly those last few years, I was at Cricket's, I think the final 3 years of college. And fun fact that's also very funny is James, my husband, at that same time was living in Lubbock and was at Tech, and he frequented that bar all the time. So we laugh at, I probably waited on him and we just didn't even know it because we didn't meet until many years later. But everything has its time. And at that point, we probably wouldn't have liked each other. So it worked out for the best. So I went to Texas Tech. I got a degree in business marketing. The reasoning for me on that was my mom had always been in advertising. She worked for American Airlines for a very long time, and she had a pretty high up job. She was the director of their international advertising branch. She was always flying to other countries, and it just seemed so luxurious to me. And she always worked really hard. And yes, we did have nannies. She wasn't always there, but I look back and I have to remind myself this a lot. Rocky, we're going to have to start keeping notes as I say things because I come up with new topics in the middle of doing these. But, you guys have asked me to talk about motherhood as well and balancing. And I think I have the luxury of looking back on my mom's own career. And whenever I start feeling like guilt or that I'm failing for being a working mom, I think back to knowing that she was working, and I really don't remember ever feeling that way. I remember her being out of the country, for a long period of time, multiple times a year. I remember her going into work every day. And back then, it was in pantyhose and suits and dressing nice. And man, I was so impressed by that. It makes me even emotional to think about it, which is funny. But I was so impressed by it. I always felt like she was very powerful. I think she was ambitious. She provided, and I always knew that I wanted to do that. So for me, originally, I was like, advertising. She does advertising. At Texas Tech, the way that it was, your advertising degree would fall under a completely different college. I think if I remember correctly, maybe it was fine arts or something of that nature. And I knew I wanted more of a business background. I knew that there were parts of advertising that I loved, but parts that didn't really interest me, and I wanted that business background. So I decided to go the marketing route. And I think she probably honestly helped point me in that direction too. So I was in the business college at Tech. I was there for 4 years, 1998 to 2002. Had fun with my sorority. I was never an A honor roll kind of girl. So Ellesyn, if you're listening to this, do what I say, not what I do. I love you. You're smarter than me. I want more for you. But Ellesyn is my A plus girl. She's in the advanced classes. It just comes naturally to her, you know. And for me, I was a little too social for my own good. So I was more of a B kind of gal. And it's okay. It worked out for me. But I went to Tech. I was in AKO. Krissy, thank goodness, her senior year, she stayed 1 semester or 1 year longer than me, I think, or something. And she ended up dating James's brother. They met, they started dating. And oddly, I never met his brother. James was a couple years older than us. By the time Krissy and Michael had kind of gotten serious, I had already graduated and left. So when I graduated, I moved back to DFW, where I was from. And so I wasn't in Lubbock. She was hanging out with Michael a lot then. I was not around them. I was in DFW. I didn't have a reason to meet James. I didn't end up meeting James for almost 5 years. So we'll get into that as we get down the path. But when I first graduated, and looking back, it's funny because for a long time, I really regretted my decision and the job that I chose. And now I'm really thankful because I think if I had gone a different route, I don't know that I ever would have started this business. When you graduate with a business degree, even business marketing, it's very interesting how so many of your friends that you are going to school with, you all end up taking completely different paths. So it's a pretty broad degree. So at the time, another one of our absolute best friends, April, she's now Ellesyn's godmother, and we were in each other's weddings, and I adore her. She graduated with the same degree at the same time as me, and she got a job doing pharmaceutical and medical sales, one or the other. She's done both, but she started out with one. And I remember her initial pay was just a little bit less than what mine was. And I was getting a job at an automotive advertising agency called the Miller Agency in Dallas. They're still there. And looking back, I'm actually really thankful in so many ways that I went the way that I went with that, because April very quickly rose, I remember, in pay. And her job seemed really glamorous to me. We had moved to Dallas, and we had a couple other roommates, April and I did. We lived in this really fun house. It was on La Manga, and we called it Club La Manga. And we had people over all the time. We went out all the time. It was so fun. It was like that first year of like, I'm out of college. I'm a grown up. I have some money in the bank, not a lot of money, but I got a little money. I can go to Taco Bell when I want. I don't have to ask my mom. I could stay up late. But then you get up and you go to work every day, and it's just this kind of surreal time in your life where you're an adult, but you're kind of not an adult. And it was really fun. Oh, that was just a great year. But anyway, at first I thought, oh man, you're not making hardly anything. Why would you, do that? And she's like, well, I didn't know anything. This was one of those where she was like, I'll get bonuses, I'll get commission, things like that. I wanted that set amount. I wanted to know that this is what my paycheck is going to look like. So she started there. I started at the automotive agency. Well, further down the line, I see that she was kind of able to come and go. She was getting home earlier every day. She had appointments she would go to, but she wasn't necessarily going to an office. And her pay moved up rather quickly, which I think in so many ways, I was kicking myself, and I was like, oh my gosh, why didn't I do that too? Because I had applied with some of those companies also and gotten an offer. And I was like, I should have done that. I could have done that. But I'll tell you the way that I think things work out for the best and the way that they're supposed to, for two reasons on this one. Do I think I ended up actually at the time not realizing I made the right choice, now knowing that I did? Number one, had I started making a lot more money more rapidly, I think it's a lot easier to get stuck in that industry. And I've seen that happen. I've seen people go into maybe bartending or, cocktail waitressing or things like that. They have degrees, they have plans, and they never really move out of it because they're making that fast cash and they want it. And it's really hard to step away from that and take a pay cut, hoping that eventually you'll be able to get back to where you were, maybe above where you were, or something like that. So I think had I done that and started really before I was ready in my early 20s, making good money, I don't know that I ever would have transitioned over to this, and I could still be doing that. And would I have enjoyed it? I don't know. I think I'm good at sales. I don't necessarily know that I'd be good at selling something that wasn't my thing. So for that reason, I'm glad that it didn't work out that way, even though for years I had wished it had. Another reason is the Miller agency where I worked. And it would be funny, honestly. She would probably be like surprised that I'm sitting here even mentioning this because it's been so long ago. This was, gosh, 22 years ago. Talk about aging yourself. That seems crazy. I almost said 12 years. And then I realized, no, scratch that, 22 years. This is 22 years ago. I got a job. It was an automotive ad agency. I just worked there for a couple of years, handful of years. I didn't do anything glamorous. I sat at the front. I answered the phones. I did not make a lot of money by any stretch. I had to sign in when I came in and sign out when I left. But I'll tell you, it was a woman-owned business. Dorothy Miller Shore is the name of the owner. She is, I think, still the owner. I think maybe her daughter or son-in-law maybe run it. I'm not really sure. But I still follow them on Facebook. I still love when I see the posts come up. I think I learned so much, whether she taught me directly or indirectly, just kind of watching the way that she ran that business, the way that she led the team, the way that they were close knit, but at the same time, she allowed them to kind of do their thing, whether it was somebody on the creative side or on the account executive side, me answering the phones. We all still would go in together and, have lunches, or we all still would be part of meetings. And just, I don't know, I feel like I learned a lot from her on a woman can do all of those things and you can be successful. And she had men that worked for her. And there was never really I don't know, like it was never odd that it was a woman. It was never any kind of questionable anything. It was just she did what she did. She did it well. She grew it. She made her money her way. And I was really impressed by it. And it reminded me of my mom again, I think. Just seeing kind of that woman, I hate to say in power, but that woman in power, honestly, and running her own business. And I think, wow, like had I not gone to that job, had I gone to some pharmaceutical job, or had I gone to something else where I maybe would have made money faster, a bigger company, she was a real small company, would I have learned what I learned? Would I have walked away as impressed as I was, and as just like aware that the possibilities were there for me too? And I didn't know what that looked like then. I didn't know what it would be that I would want to do. I did not have any strong after college like calling of, gosh, I really want to be in this industry, or I want to do this or whatever. I didn't know, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I hoped that it would come to me, and it took a while, but it eventually did. So thank you to Dorothy Miller Shore. You probably didn't know it, but you definitely led me in some ways. Thank you to my mom for sure. And so I worked there for a couple of years. Then, as it happens, some little snake stole me away. That's a whole other funny story. But one of the car dealerships that was our client, he wooed me and was like, the whole thing they do. Oh, you're not getting value there. You should come work here and do all of our advertising in-house. And it seemed so exciting because it was like, okay, at this place, I'm answering the phones. I'm not really getting to do as much on the day-to-day of really getting into all the advertising. And hindsight 2020, that was something that had I stuck around and had I stayed there, I know that I would have ended up doing those things. And she would have absolutely, had me doing some of those more fun things. But that's just not how it played out. And I believed what I was being sold, and it was exciting. And it was like, oh, I'll get to go there and do those things. No. I went there, and the wool was definitely pulled over my eyes, and it was a assistant to the boss. He wanted me getting the coffee and getting the lunches, and it was not what it was made out to be. So I didn't stay there long. At this point, we're well into 2023. It's almost not 2023. Here we go again with me wanting to be younger than I am. 2003. almost 2004. My parents had split up a while before this. My mom decided to move to Florida. I said, I want to go. I want to come with you. That's so fun. That's exciting. I want to go to the beach. At this point, some of my roommates had found their soon to be husbands. I wasn't loving my job. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I felt like I thought I had known, but then this just wasn't it. And so I said, okay, I'm going to come with you. I moved with my mom to Florida. We were living on an island. We lived on Anna Maria Island. There was not a lot for me to do there. So at that point, I decided to become a teacher, not because I felt this calling. I had not always wanted to be a teacher. That wasn't something that I just was like yearning to do. It was more of, I'm either going to work at Hurricane Hanks, I'm going to work at one of the restaurants out here, or I'm going to become a teacher. So as it is in Texas, if you have a degree, I had a college degree, you're able to go in and pretty quickly become a substitute teacher and then get your license to become a teacher. So that's what I decided to do. Wasn't necessarily something that I knew I wanted to do, but I knew I wasn't enjoying what I was doing. And I thought, maybe this is it. Maybe this is something I'll love. So I got the certification, did the Saturday classes, got a job as a sub at a charter school on the island, which I actually really did love. It was middle schoolers, and let me tell you, they are wild. That is a whole new world. You couldn't pay me enough to ever do it again. God bless the teachers, especially the middle school. These kids don't know left from right. They don't know who they are. They don't know who they want to be. They are a completely different breed of human. It was entertaining, if nothing else. So we did that for a while. And then I started teaching high school. I really did enjoy teaching high school. If it were able to just be me and the students and not the parents and the administration and the testing and the rules, I would have loved to do that forever. I loved those high school kids. I'm still Facebook friends with a lot of the kids that I taught in high school. And when I say kids, talk about depressing, they're now parents themselves, most of them married with their own careers. But I loved that. I had fun with it. I taught business courses. I taught marketing, BCIS. I was a student council sponsor. I really did enjoy the years that I did that. I had a lot of fun with it. I did that in Florida for a couple of years. After about 3 years of living in Florida, I came back to DFW. I just felt like Katie at that point had my niece Presley. My sister Angie had her kids, and I had missed a lot of that. I felt like I was missing out on family. I was in a small island community where I had my handful of friends, and I just felt like if I want to get married and I want to have kids and I want, all these things, I need to go back to DFW. This is too small here. This is somewhere I'll visit, not somewhere I'll live. For many years after that, I kind of regretted that because who leaves palm trees in the ocean? And I still go back and forth, and James and I absolutely do want to retire there eventually. It's our home away from home. We go multiple times a year. My mom is still there, and we love it there. But I do think I made the right choice. I moved back. I got a job in McKinney, Texas. Y'all didn't know I was going to dive deep into my lifetime story, but here we are. I got a job teaching at McKinney Boyd High School, which was actually really cool because it was a new school. So I was there to help open that school. I was one of the first couple hires, and I had so much fun with that. Rick McDaniel was the principal. He ended up becoming the superintendent in McKinney. I think he recently just retired, but he was awesome to work for. Awesome to work for. He was a great principal, a great leader. I was able to develop the student council program there, which was really cool because it was a brand new school. It hadn't been there. And so I took a lot of what I did at Manatee High School in Florida, and we did that in McKinney. And I had so much fun doing that. It was a great school to work at, great principal to work for. I made some great friends. And that's the school I was at when the Polkadot Alley began. So I was, this is 2006. I started making towel wraps, as I told you in chapter 1. For a teacher up at the school. I then started doing them for the cheer squad. I started doing them for other people. Word got around, and I was working there, during the day, and I was living in a little like efficiency apartment. And at night I was working on this on my one machine my mom had gotten me for Christmas. So I started everything there. I would have stayed there absolutely because I loved the principal. I loved the students. I loved the town and the school. But love changed everything. I, at this point, had met James. So we moved back. Let me see. We didn't. My mom stayed. I don't know why I talk like I have a mouse in my pocket, but I moved back from Florida to that DFW area. in, I think it was maybe the summer of 2006. And then I worked that school year and I met him in the spring of '07. So we started dating. I finally met him because Krissy and Michael were getting married. So at this point, of course, I had met Michael numerous times, but I just never had a reason to meet his brother. When he would come in town to DFW, and then he ended up moving to DFW, James was still in Lubbock. He was the older brother. I hadn't met him. I met him for the first time at their couple's shower at the boys' aunt, who's now, I guess, my aunt by marriage, at their house. And I met him. And he still laughs because he thinks that I chased after him. And I'm like, listen, bud, you were not it. He had on slacks. He had on a button down, like total nerd vibe. And I was like, why are you not in jeans? And to this day, he cannot argue me on this. I got him looking stylish, okay? I eventually made him buy his first pair of like jeans. He always was dressed for work, okay? We were like in our 20s. So I know the trends have changed, but he thinks that I was into him that day. I was not. So let the record show. But later, it might have been a little bit more me. That's fine. So we met at the couple's shower. Nothing happens from there. We end up talking on the phone a couple times because, again, this is before texting and things like that. That's another thing that I helped him with. I actually made him get texting added to his phone plan. But we were planning the wedding. So we would get on the phone periodically to talk about, what are you going to say in your speech? He was the best man. I was the maid of honor. We would talk about like the gift. I was giving a scrapbook to them. So we talked about what the gift was going to be. And trying to make sure that everything was kind of lined up on what we were going to do for those gifts. So a couple phone calls turned into a couple more phone calls. The night of the wedding, we were both there. He was in a tux. I was in a dress. Hard eyes were made. And the rest is history. So we dated long distance, not for that long, maybe about a year. At this point, I was 27. He was almost 30. You kind of know when you know. I, at the time, had, again, hearts in my eyes, and I thought I can live anywhere. So I'll go where you are. I'll go to Lubbock. So I continued to grow PDA a little bit in that apartment while we were first dating for, a little while. And then whenever I ended up moving to Lubbock, I got a job at Lubbock Cooper High School. I only taught there, I think, for 1 year because, as we talked about in chapter 1, pay definitely went down. PDA was starting to go up. We knew that we were planning a wedding, and just multiple things led me to kind of making that decision. And God bless James that he did, because that's something that, had he not agreed with, allowed me to, enabled me to, however, whatever words we want to use, had he not been able to let me give this a go full time, it 100% would not be where it was. Number one, your girl is not good with finances. Okay. You give me a Gucci store and a debit card and I'm going to go shopping. Okay. So number one, I go to market. I see it. I like it. I buy it. I got it. I am not the budgeter. That would be him. Number two, because of those problems, maybe I didn't have the best credit. He did. So for many reasons, he allowed PDA to become what it was 1,000,000%. So he never envisioned it becoming what it did, but neither did I. But he still never tampered it down. He never really treated it like it was a hobby or told me not to do it. If anybody knows James, he is in so many ways very go with the flow. And because I married well, I was able to grow this to what it was. And by married well, I don't mean financially. I don't mean any of those things. I just mean a supportive person. Somebody who it's never been, well, you're the woman, I'm the man. So you're going to do this and I'm going to do this. He always from the beginning was just like, I think he's always, even though he does not understand me, we are polar opposites. He does not understand me, but I do think that he believes in me. And I think that he at this point trusts me in that when I have an idea, it can pan out. And so he just rolls with it. He's learned to just go with the flow. And I know I've had so many friends over the years that are like, oh my gosh, you're so lucky. Like he doesn't care that you go out of town all the time, or on a Saturday, I remember like I'll go to Home Goods and go wandering and go do things. And I'll have friends that are like, does he not care that you're just leaving for like 3 hours? And I'm like, no, he's more of a homebody. He is not the social butterfly. He does not care to be out doing things and going places. And it doesn't bother him when I do. And it never has. And another thing too that's interesting is, with us building 3 houses now. We built a house in Lubbock. We built our dream home here that burned down. And then, of course, now we're building it again. It's primarily me that makes all those decisions, goes to those meetings, does all of those things. And I think a lot of men have problems with that and maybe feel, their masculinity is put into question, or they feel like, whatever it might be. He's never been like that. Like, he's like, I don't care. You know what I mean? It's 2024, whatever. You're into the design. I'm not. You care what the tile looks like. I don't. He also knows that I am the one that if I'm annoyed about something, I'm going to say something. He's never going to be the one to do that unless it's me. Trust. He has no problem getting annoyed at me or the kids. But if he meets you, he's always going to be the good cop and I'm the bad cop. That's just kind of the dynamic of our relationship. It's what works and it's how it's been. It's probably how it will always be. But in those beginning years, he had no idea it was going to become what it was, but he still was out there at night helping me pack orders. He was still helping me do things, not because he thought it was going to turn into this, but because he knew I enjoyed it. He knew it was something that I was good at and it was something that was making me happy. And so he was happy to help. He was okay with it. He was very go with the flow. And I do think back, like of course, over the years, without mentioning names, I've seen every kind of husband that there is. I have friends that are still married to some of these husbands. I have some that have divorced some of these husbands. I've been able to just see so many dynamics of relationships play out over these last 20 years, in adulthood. And it makes me even more aware and more thankful for the fact that I never had those issues, because he's always been just very supportive and very you do you and I do me. That's another thing too that I think is funny. We've always had separate bank accounts. We're very, we're two individual people that married each other, and it's stayed that way. And I think there are some people who over the years have had a hard time thinking like, how do y'all do that? That's so bizarre. Like, that's weird. You're married. Why wouldn't you have everything this? Why wouldn't you do this? And we just haven't, I think when we got married, I was 30, 1 week into being 30, which that's a whole other episode as well. I hated that. We got engaged and I wanted to be married before 30. I was adamant that I wanted to be married before 30. I was very for some reason, I just felt like I have to be married in my 20s. And we had picked this place, the Buffalo Thunder Resort in Santa Fe, New Mexico. They didn't have any openings. I had to get married 7 days after I turned 30. And man, it bothered me. It really bothered me. And he thought it was so stupid. He was like, who cares? It's 1 week. And I was like, I know, but I want to say I got married in my 20s. And so I had the hardest time with coping with that. And it's so silly looking back, but tell a girl that's 29 that, So I ended up getting married then. But the point is, I was 27 before we met. He was almost 30. When we got married, I was 30. I think he was around 33. We were kind of set in our ways a little bit, and it's okay. And even now, we don't hang out together every night. He watches a show in the media room. I watch a show in our bedroom. We don't have our finances commingled. We do have an account that is combined to pay a lot of the, things, the house and things like that. But then we have other things that we pay for. We go out to dinner. He always pays. When I order groceries or buy the kids' clothes, I pay. We just have different things that we handle. If something happens to him tomorrow, we are in a creek because I could not even tell you what our mortgage company is. I don't know who we pay. I don't know what we do. He handles all those things. But on the flip side, he probably could not tell you what our kid's doctor's name is. He has no idea how to get the kids signed up for camp or how to register, the things that they want for school or how to pick out their clothes. We kind of have our different duties. I've never once taken the trash out in our house. I don't know what days they come. I don't know what we're supposed to do. I have no idea. But that's what works for us. And I think every couple is going to have their different dynamics. I've seen some couples where she handles everything and he goes to work and that's about it. I've seen some where it's vice versa. For us, it's pretty split in a lot of ways, and that's what works for us, and that's what keeps us happy. He maybe wouldn't care if maybe I wanted to help clean up a little bit here and there, but I think he's also learned that it's just at this point probably not going to happen. So I'm not saying it's all peaches and roses by any means. We drive each other crazy in a lot of ways, but I think that we have stayed in so many ways true to the same way that we were when we were dating that worked for us, that allowed it to kind of allowed the business to grow for sure, because he was always so kind of flexible and laid back, and he had no problem pitching in as needed with the kids. And it was never a, well, this is your thing, or you're the mom, or this is your job, which I have seen in a lot of marriages. And that absolutely would never have worked for me. It just wouldn't. So whether I have this job or not, but because he was not like that, I was able to grow it. So I'm thankful for that. So we, as I said, I moved there. We started PDA. Go back to chapter 1 if you want to see more on that. He built out that garage for me, which was awesome, and allowed me to have kind of a place. Anyone who started their own business out of a room in your house knows that that can only grow for so long at that rate. And then it starts kind of taking over your living space, and then you don't really enjoy the job as much, and it's just really hard. So having that space that I could go walk outside and I could kind of separate myself made it feel more real, made it feel more like a business, and it really allowed me to grow it into more of what it is now. We got married, and I knew before we got married that I wanted kids. I knew that I wanted 3. He knew that he wanted 2. He would like to tell you that I made him have that 3rd, but don't listen to that if you ever have a conversation with him, because before we got married, I said, don't marry me unless you're okay with 3 kids. I knew I wanted 3 kids. Had I been younger, I think I would have loved to have had 4. I love kids. I don't so much love like the little phases as much. I love the dynamic of knowing what it'll be like when they're all older. I think it's just fun. I think, and we all saw those same shows that maybe romanticized it for us, but Party of 5 and Growing Pains and all those shows, Full House and all of it, but The Cosby Show, seeing everybody with all these kids, and it just seemed so fun. And maybe that's why Katie ended up with 5. I don't know. We'll let her come on for that topic. But I knew that I wanted to have kids. We right off the bat knew, due to me only having one ovary and a whole other topic, but that I may have some issues with it. So early on, I had already planned to see a fertility specialist, and luckily we never had to get into IVF or anything strong like that. We did an IUI with Ellesyn and with Harrison, and they both took on the first try, thank goodness. So that was not like a super long road in comparison to, I have a lot of friends who had to try for years and years and do IVF. Mine was nothing of that nature, but it's still stressful. It still takes a lot out on you, the appointments and the Clomid and, the procedures and things like that. So we did do that. And we had Ellesyn, my firstborn, we called baby Polkadot. And so she was born in 2011. As I've told you guys, PDA really ramped up in 2012. We were still living in Lubbock, obviously. I did not have a storefront at this point. I had a baby. She was out there with me every day. It was really an awesome time. I got to stay home with her while I was kind of growing the early stages of PDA. And when I say early stages, at this point, gosh, I was 5-6 years in, but I had at that point been making enough to basically, pay for gas, pay to get my nails done, and for my cell phone and, things like that. It was not necessarily like providing much for our family. I was just doing, little custom orders, and she would sit out there with me in her playpen and her bumbo seat. And it was just a really fun time. It was good. Then we kind of got to the point where, okay, orders are starting to pick up. She was born at this point. I want to say, I think I told y'all the other day, maybe 5 months, 6 months into having her is when we kind of had our first big sale take off. I was very torn because the whole reason I started PDA originally was I want to have something I know I'm going to want to be at home. I want to do something where I can be a stay-at-home mom and be with my kids. And then right off the bat, it started to really grow right after she was born. And so it was crazy because I had all these years that I worked from home without a baby, and I was able to do it, and it was kind of small. And then just as timing and luck would have it, I had her, and then it kind of started to blow up just a few months later. And so I had to put her in Montessori, and I really struggled. I remember first we put her in like a church Mother's Day Out program. And I'll never forget, James and I went up in two cars and, we both had to be there, but then he had to go into the office and I had to go back home, which is where I was working, but I needed to be able to focus. And so we had decided to put her there a couple days a week. I still remember exactly the parking lot. I remember where I was parked in regards to the church in Wolfforth, Texas. Never will forget it. Lindsay Hayes was the director there. And I, I cried my eyes out. We dropped her off and I just remember sobbing. I had such guilt and I felt like, what is it worth? Why am I doing this if I have to take her here? She's so little. And I was just really upset. And I think by this point, maybe she was 8, 9 months old. I had waited a couple months. That is what it was, because she was born in November. March, we kind of blew up. And then early summer, I put her in for that summer program. And I was really struggling with that. Looking back, it was the best decision. Not only did she love it and she flourished, and then, you'll never know why, but it's like she's so good with people. She's so smart. She's very, I don't know. I think, and of course, some kids don't get me wrong on this. Some kids do benefit from staying home longer and not going somewhere. I think she did, though. I think she needed it. I think she loved it, and it was great for her. And I think it was the right choice. And in those years, that's when we really were able to grow and bloom with PDA. So it was the right choice. So from then on, she went a couple years later. We opened the store, as I talked about in chapter 1. We had Harrison, which will be an entire other chapter. At the time Harrison was born, I had to be much more present with him. So as I said, I did have to take a little bit of a step back from PDA. We had to put her in that Montessori at that point full time, because he was living in the hospital. He was in the NICU and I had to be there throughout the day. So 2014 was a really big balancing act for me between the store and building a house and being with her and being with him and surgeries. And really 2014 and 15 were both a lot of that. It was just a lot of balancing and struggles. 2016, we got our Hayes, who just came on his own at 36 years old for me, and that was so exciting. And as we speak, he's home right now with a fever. The nurse called right before we started this. And so you have that back and forth of, I know James is there with him right now, though, so I don't have to be. And I'll be there with him in an hour or two, and it will be okay. And I think over the years, that's been something I've had to learn a lot of, is just balancing that. And again, that can be another chapter too, but just knowing that you can't be everything to everyone all the time, and that's okay. And sometimes you have to work, and sometimes you have to mother, and sometimes you try to balance them both. But 2016, Hayes was born. Everything kind of stayed as it was, worked a lot, had the babies, and then we moved here. So moved here a few years ago. As you know, we built our dream home. As you also probably know, that home burned down to the ground, and we're in the process of rebuilding. So we'll dive deeper into that. But what I do now is I work. I come in a couple days a week. I work from home a lot. I love to travel. We go back to Florida often. It's one of my favorite places. I also love me some Las Vegas. I love slots. I love shopping. I love eating. I love people watching. So that's one of my favorite places to go. The beach, though, is definitely my happy spot. Vegas is my let's go for a weekend. Definitely couldn't live there. I'd be bankrupt. But let's go for a weekend. Let's look around. Let's people watch. I love the sound of the slot machines. Don't like the smell of the smoke, but you win some, you lose some. I love shows. I love going to the Cirque du Soleil shows. I love concerts, just those kinds of things. You get to wear all the cute outfits and it's fun. 3 nights is plenty. So we go there. One of the perks of PDA is that we have a Southwest card. So we fly for free, and we go to Vegas enough that now they give us rooms for free. So how can we not, The kids have gotten older. It's not as hard. It's a lot easier to be able to leave them for the weekend. Luckily, I have an older sister that likes to earn some shopping credit, and she loves her niece and nephews. So we work out some barters, and it works for both of us. So we go there a couple times a year. But Florida is our happy place. That's where we go for 2 weeks in the summer. We try to usually go for spring break and then maybe for one holiday here or there. My mom and her husband are there. They live right there on the water. We love going on the boat and looking at the dolphins. We love finding sand dollars, just that smell of that saltwater air, even though the humidity kills my vibe. It relaxes me. It calms me. I find that I go to sleep earlier when I'm there for some reason. I sleep better. I read more. Now I'm a needlepoint nerd. I love to needlepoint. So I'm real excited for the summer to go. I've already planned my projects that I'm going to take with me. But I got into needlepointing over Christmas break. And that's become a really fun, big, creative, and just kind of stress outlet for me. I had realized over the last year I was doing this coloring app a lot. It was really fun, but I kept thinking, gosh, every night I was trying to not be on social media as much. For my job, obviously, I'm on it a lot. So I felt like I'm losing my mind. I'm going crazy, and I cannot just scroll countlessly for hours every night. I'm kind of a night owl. I needed a nighttime thing. I'm a huge reader. I've always been a reader, but I wanted something creative. I wanted something to do. I'm not making the towel wraps anymore. I'm not doing all of those creative things, and I wanted that outlet. At the time, I was not building a house. Right now, my creativity is being able to be channeled back into the home building, but we were already living in our home like a year, 2 years ago. I didn't have that option. So I was coloring a lot on this app, and I kept thinking, how many hours am I wasting of my life on this coloring app that will turn into nothing? And, think about that. So many of you, I think we play those games on our phone or coloring or whatever it might be. And it's like, I'm not going to get anything out of this. I've always loved crafts. I've always loved the art of embroidery and things like that. So it was just kind of natural. I saw a video on TikTok. I also have an aunt, my Aunt Liz, Needlepoints, and it was just something that really interested me and that I decided I want to get into, and I love it. And I keep getting made fun of for it, which is so rude, okay? Because you don't have to be a certain age bracket to sew. But anyways, that's fine. They can laugh all they want while I have a tree covered in beautiful needlepoint ornaments next year. I have had the most fun in needlepointing. Every night, that's just what I do. And some nights, like last night, I didn't at all. We didn't get home till after 11 from the live. That's okay. Some nights I don't do it at all. Some days I go home in the middle of the day before the kids get out, and I'll get my work done. And then I'm like, I'm going to just chill. I'm going to sit and wait on the bus, and I'm going to needlepoint for like 30 minutes. And it just kind of takes me into another brain mode. I'm not in work mode anymore. I'm in my pretending I'm retired era. So it's fun and I enjoy it. So I used to love going to the movies. I still do, but post COVID, that's just not as much of a thing anymore, which is really sad. I remember every weekend, that was one of our biggest arguments as a couple. James never loved going to movie theaters. He always said he didn't want to smell pickles and listen to people talking. He wanted to watch them from home. And I love going to the movies. I love getting the popcorn and seeing the big screen. And it's just they don't have as many going to the theater anymore, but that's something I've always loved. I love to shop. I definitely love to shop. I love home design and home decor. I love creating pretty spaces. So I have a lot of things I love. It's not as much about trying to find a hobby. It's about trying to find time to fit all the hobbies in. So that's probably more about me than you ever wanted to know. If there's anything in there that I talked about that you would like for me to dive deeper on, or if you're like, please don't ever talk about yourself again, either way, give us that feedback. Let me know what you want to hear more from me on, and I'll try to fill in the gaps. Hi, everybody. Happy birthday to us.